We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelik of Zion in volume 27. This is the third sicha for the Parshas Tazria. It's a Rashi sicha, a very detailed, has a lot of clarifications as the subject of Tuma V'Tara, the different Negoim, the different plagues, and the specific. And the Rebbe brings in a tremendous clarity and tremendous chidushim. It's a very difficult Rashi, how to reconcile the Rashi as opposed to the Ramban, and then how it fits with the Rambam and the halacha. Rashi seems to say against the halacha. There's a lot of details in this sicha, which requires paying attention because these are very fine distinctions over here between the different halachas. We'll go step by step, and Ezra Hashem will able to cover and understand the Rebbe's sicha at least to the extent possible. Tazria Gimel Aleph. So first, the Rebbe breaks down that in the pasuk, "V'ish ki yimorit roishoi kereach hu toir hu." The verse talks about the various different signs of tsaras, which make the person tummy, a sign of a plague. In this verse, it says, if a person's head becomes bald, this is almost to say that's a natural phenomenon that Yimoret Reishe, that his hair of his head falls out. So that's called Kereyahu. That's a bolt. And Tohiru, then he's not Tomei. Again, as we'll see, the Rebbe explains all this according to Rashi, according to the Ramban as we go along. So stellt sich Rashi if the Werter. So Rashi places himself, it says that he is Tohir, that so what does it mean that he is Tohir? One would tempt, as the Rebbe will say, to say that just the fact that the hair fell out, that does not make him Tomei for becoming bald, sort of Yimoret Reishe. So that's would be understood. Kereach hu toiru. That's a baldy, and a baldy is toir. There's nothing wrong. There's no sickness. There's no tzaras by losing hair. But Rashi teaches. Stellt sich Rashi. Rashi places himself auf the Werter on the words Kereach hu toir hu. What does it mean, toir? We're not talking about from the bald spot. Rashi says in his Mefarish, Tohir mitumas nisokin. If previously we learned there is two places of the leprosy, one which goes on the skin, that's called nega tsaras. Then there is something nega which comes in a place where hair grows, sort of on the hair, on the head, on the beard, where there is hair. Those tsaras, they're called nesokim, nesek. So Rashi explains when the pasuk says korach kereyahu toiru uzniz mefaris. Rashi explains tohir mitumas nesokin, that if there is a tumah of nesokin, which usually is a yellow hair, would be a tumas nesokin, on the place where there is the bald spot now, there is a kereach, yimoret reishay. If he will get a sign which would make him tame by a place of the beard which is on his sokin, he would be toiru. Toir mis tumas nisokin. So when the pasuk says toiru, that if he should develop a yellow hair, so to say, he will be toher. There's no nesokin. She'enoi nidon b'simone rosh v'zokin. We're not going to judge him now with the signs of tuma of a head on the head or the beard, because nisokin usually is a place of hair, which is the head and the beard. But in this case, since he has a bald spot, he doesn't have any hair. This, so in that spot, he will not be judged. He will not be dealt. The halachas is not going to be like there is simone reish v'zokin, because shehem mokim sar. Those are places of hair, so they have the special dinim of nisokin. But over here, because it's a bald spot, it's not your head, not dealt like the head or the beard. El bismone niga basar. But with the signs, when there is a plague on the skin of the flesh, which would be besar lovon. What are the things that over there it's a white hair as opposed to a yellow hair? Umichya, Michya is the healing in the heals on, or it gets less as the dinim by the Eir Habasar, that there is a Michyas Eir Bocher, there is a raw piece of flesh underneath, or there is a increase or decrease. The regular dinim of Tsaras Eir Basar, Niga Eir Basar, the Niga Eir Basar. So basically, once there is Yemoret Reishay, there is a bold in his head, we're no longer going to treat it like a place of a head or beard, which would the Mokim Sar, which is tummy by the Natumas Nisokim, which is dealt with its own criteria, which is the Tzoev, Asar Tzoev. Over here is going to go back, and it's just like Niger Basar. So if he develops a nega on that bald spot on the Moret Reisha, on the Kareach, then it's dealt with as a Niger Basar. So first the Rebbe explains why we don't learn this in a very simple level. Why don't we learn the pasuk as the Ramban learns that the bold in it, that the person experiences that Yemoret Reisha, that his head becomes bald, loses the hair, or kireach, that he becomes a karachas, he becomes a bald. Why don't we say that the Torah is trying to tell you that becoming bald is not a nega? That's the Ramban learns like that. We're not talking about that in the bald spot you develop either a nesek or you develop a nega or bosor, and this is toyer and not toyer. We're just talking about maybe that the fact that you became bald does not make you is not a nega. That itself is not a nega. I'm saying that it's toher, that you don't become tame because of becoming bald. And that's the Rambam learns. So why does Rashi learn like that? So the Rebbe explains. The tam of them was Rashi learned need them posik kipshute. The reason why Rashi does not teach, does not learn this verse literally. As toher kumt shoylel zayin this svara, that when we say that he's clean, is coming to negate, might be an idea. What is the Torah trying to tell us? You might think as dur chimorit reishay, through the fact that your head loses the hair. Zol der mensch werden tome, the person become tome. That's not what the pasuk is saying over here. Rashi doesn't learn. Rashi nor as toer mistumas nisokin. But Rashi says that it's not, that if on that bold spot is going to develop a tumas nisoking, he's going to be toher, and it's going to have the tumah of. So why doesn't Rashi just say that you were toher? And that has to do, the Rebbe will explain with Rashi's understanding and his previous explanation, what is the meaning of nisoking. According to the Ramban, he learns nisokin means detached. The Ramban learns that the nega that is in the hair or the beard, which is called tumas nesek, has to do with an uprooting of the hair that was in the head or the beard, and it changed into a color of yellow, which would show a sign of tumah. So it has to do with detachment. And that therefore can follow that if hair gets detached, like in Morit Reishoi, which means it's a bold spot, the whole side, a section, not like one place in middle of the hair, which has hair around them. Uh, so then this would be Torah. That's the way the Rambam would learn. But Rashi learns nesek has nothing to do with bald or losing hair, and therefore this is not what it's talking about. Let's look inside. Benegayet zu tumas nisokin gefindt men amachlikis. As it pertains to the tumah of nisokim, there's a disagreement between the Ramban and Rashi. The Ramban learned as nesek meant nitak mishom hasar. The word nesek, which is the name of this plague, means that nitak mishom hasar, the hair has been removed from there. Sie ist herausgenommen geworden von Roshei Oizukone Sar Kigris, that from his hair of his head or from the hair of his beard, the size of a bean of hair has been taken out. The hair size, the size of a gris, is damul binyanim. So then, if in that space, in the space of the detached, the hair that was gone, in that place, noilad shom hasar hazeh hatzov vadak halokui, over there was created, comes out a hair which is yellow, thin, which is plagued, the bad hair. That's this. That's it. Usim and tuma. That's a sign of tuma. So that's the way that Ramban learns. But Rashi doesn't say nesek has anything to do with hair that came out. Rashi learns that nesek is just another name of the plague when it's in the hair. Rashi teicht aber nitazoi. Rashi doesn't translate. So. Frier von Posik Nesekhu. Before on the Posik Nesekhu. Sagt Rashi, Rashi says, Kach Shmoi Shel Nega Shabemokim Sar. This is the name of the nega when it's in the place of the hair, on the head, on the beard. It's called nesek. Or b'shas in them nega shebemokim sar, and when in the nega, the plagued, which is in a place of hair, verta simen fusar tzov, there is a sign of a yellow hair, or the pishyoin, or it's spreads out, demul vert tome, then it becomes tome. So there is just a definitions of a name of nesek, which and its criteria when it becomes tame through a sarzo or even a pishe. Rashi does not say that nesek something was removed and it grew in its place. Unerzoknit dem pirush as the negar bastate in nitak, that it was removed. In them was nitak mishom hasar, that the hair was removed like the Rambam. Rashi doesn't say that. Okay, so now this makes now a clear answer why Rashi can't say that his toyer yimorid reshe. Mele, according to the Ramban, which normally the nesek, when the hair in the beard has to do with a detachment of hair, a loss of hair. So then there might be a thought that if there is a bald, the person becomes bald, not just one hair, but this whole section, maybe that should be a sign of tumah. The pasuk says no. But according to Rashi, it has nothing to do with removal. Why would the Torah have to tell you, who? Why would removing of hair is not a sign, has nothing to do with Tumah? So it has to be that in the place where there was the bald spot, that's what we're coming to teach you. Lefizah. As nesek is in Yonei. We can understand if we learn that what is nesek was nitak misham asad. How the hair was removed from there. Ken and len and bepashtus. Then you can learn simply in the pasuk over here, because we already learned about nitak, about the place that hair has been removed and it's replaced. So here we can learn very simply. As the pasuk v'ishki moret reishi karechu toiru. What is this pasuk? A person whose head will develop a bald spot. He is considered bald, but he's toir. Was kommt noch der Parsha von Nega Nesek that follows the portion of the Nige Nesek, of the plagues of the Nesek. Is Shoilo, the Soksal so that comes to negate what you might think. As you moret is all schaffen tumo, that if your head becomes bald, when your head loses the hair, it creates a tumo. Valdos is a nega beroish v'zokin. This becomes a nega in the head or the beard. Now you developed a bald spot. It's a nesek. As vertaro is der sarsha beroish. The ear of his head has been taken out. So der Pasik. So then the Pasik is telling us, as b'shas yimoret roishoi, that if your head develops a bald spot, other milfonov, other milachrov, either in the front of your head or behind, demot is just nit kein nesek, then it's not a nesek. A nega beroish, it's not considered a plague in the head, nor toiru, that is toir. Es wird nicht tome durch Moret Reshe. Wird nicht tome durch A person does not become tome Moret Reshe. We understand, we can learn Torah as bepashtus, that the bowl doesn't make you a plague of a nesek of the head, just like the other nesek removing here, but it doesn't make you. Because, so this follows the nige nesek. Ulefizeh kommt behemshech echot zu the prierdike psukim. So this comes in one flow to the previous psukim. V'ish oy isha ki be'oir b'sorim behoris. If they develop these boils, the expects that, but they don't have the simone tumo. This is a blister. It's called a boyak, which is not a simon tumo. It sprouted in the skin, toirhu. So that does not qualify as a tumor. So just like as the behoris, levonis, shafen nitkin tumor, these behoris, white ones do not create tumor. If they mention nor toirhu, bleibt toir, it remains toir. So the flow is, while there is ba'ir besoram, the signs of the tumors, there is a bahores, which is not a sign. That's a boyaku. It's not tumor. The noch is the posik mamshich. As punkt, same followed lines, is with the hair and the head and the beard. The noch is the posik mamshich. As punkt vidos is beneged the negoyim beir habosar, just as it is, as it pertains to the negoim, to the plagues which are on the skin of the flesh, about which it discusses in the beginning of the Parshas Negoim. As Ezainen Faran Bahoris, Ezainen nit metame. There are some Bahoris that are not make you tame. Those are the Boyak Bahoris. Al derech zeh has been negate to their under Sug Negoim. Same thing is the second, the other category of negoim, beroishe bezokin, on the head or on the beard. As is do a metzias bedin, there is a metzias. In halacha, venitku sidis saresh, when the hair of the head have been detached, and sometimes that would make a nega if it's by being detached, but sometimes as wird nicht einmal diese b'shas dos is nicht a chelik cotton when it's not just a small pale place when it's torn out von roish nor yemoret roishay, but this is talking about it's a big spot. His head loses a lot of hair. Is not toiru and it's toiru, so it's consistent. Oir bosor has some tame, some things that are not tamei, then the Torah follows through with the negoim of the head. Some are tamei if it's a small spot, but ki yimoret reishe kereyachu, it's a big bold spot over there. It does not make it tamei. That's how we would learn, according to the Rambam, that nesek means detached. So detached means a small part, but not a kereyach, not a yimoret reishe. Loit pirush Rashi over, but according to Rashi. Can't say that because according to Rashi, it has nothing to do with detached here. Rashi doesn't teach nesek detached here. Loit pirush Rashi, but according to Rashi, however, was teach nit by negoim sheberoish v'zoket. When it comes to the negoim in the head and the beard, Rashi doesn't say as the nega bashtet in the shiras hasidus that this plague consists of what is the plague that the hairs fall out, like the Rambam said, the hair fall out. Weisman nit fun kein din, so we have no knowledge. There is no indication anywhere. There's no halacha as the shiras hasidus on a nega that if the hair falls, that should be a nega. We have no reason to negate it. Ubemele is nitoken kosalka daitoch to learn. So there would be no thought to learn as the inyan from Yemorit Rosh is on Matamazain. That if you lose your hair, it should be Tomei. We never learned about a plague because nesek doesn't mean losing hair, according to Rashi. Davdos der Posuk nit shoylo sein und sagen as teuro, then the Posuk doesn't need to negate and say, no, it's Torah Yemorit Rosh. Why would it be Tomei? As wird nicht Tomei, it doesn't become Tomei. The Mehechet Teisa Zel Yetom Zayin Tomo. Where would you think that it should become? So Rashi, who doesn't learn that nesek, the sign of nesek that we were discussing previously about the head and the beard, has nothing to do with detachment of hair. There would be no reason that you should be tummy. The Torah has to tell you that if he has develops bald in his head, on his head, then he's tired. Uh, the Rebbe learned Rashi, so that's what Rashi learns. As mitoir who main need the Torah learning, that the Torah doesn't mean to teach us this simple as Rashi the Rebbe wanted to simply as Yimori Troisha Shafnit Kintume, that because his hair fell out, he's not Tomei. That can't mean that because there's no reason to think. The Pasuk read Benegayet so an nega b'mokimzeh. We're talking about a nega in that place. As it is Tomei mitumas nisokim, that this is no longer considered a hair or beard like a place it's on the head. No longer because there's no more hair there. So it's not Torah mitumas nisokim if there's a nega there. She'einu nidin b'simone reish v'zokin she'mokim sar. You don't treat him with the signs of a reish v'zokin, which are a place of a hair. It's not a place of a hair anymore, and therefore it doesn't have the tumas nesokim. So that's why Rashi, the Rebbe explained, has to say that we're dealing with a nega b'mokoim, the place where it was Yemorit with the Kereach is, because to tell you that the Yemorit, the Kereach doesn't create a Tuma, according to Rashi, we don't know anywhere going out here causes Tuma. Not Like the Ramban who says netek means detached here, and on the place of the detached here grows, then there is a need to explain that the Pasuk has to say. Yimor Rashi does not create tumah, but according to Rashi, we have to say talking about the nega. So Rashi has to say there's no tumas nesek in there. But the Rebbe's issue is yes, but why does Rashi have to say that there is tumas oir over there? Rashi should just say that there is no tumas nesakin because there's no more hair there, because the Torah says Torah. Who tells Rashi that that becomes like the regular skin or the other skin? Why would we have to say that? Why don't you just say it's Torah? It doesn't have nesakin, but it doesn't become now like other parts of the skin that it gets the other negoyim. Why does that? Who does Rashi know that? Base. And darf aber verstehen, we need to understand Rashi's Moisiv. Rashi adds, in addition to that, it doesn't become Tumas Nesokin. So Rashi adds, Ela b'simone niga irbasar chulu, that it does become the simone of the usual negoyim on the skin of the flesh. Chulu. L'cheire im Posuk steht doch beferish blois toiru. The Posuk here only says he's toir. Doesn't say that it does become tummy. From one of them, Rashi do in Posig, where does Rashi take it in this Posig? As bisimoni niger yatome, that the simonim of the plagues that affect the skin of the flesh, he does become tummy. Maybe that doesn't get any tumor over there. How do we know that? So Mefarshim bring in al smoker lepirush Rashi. The Mefarshim bring down a source for Rashi. The limud with chilas teres kahanim. From the we learned it out in the beginning of Teres Kainim and Braisa the Rabbi Yishmael. And over there we'll see we can learn it out from later on. And we have a rule that Dover Alomid Minyoni, something which is learned from the subject matter, which means later on we're going to see that there is a tumah of the karachas or gabachas, there will be a tumor. He loses the hair, and then that becomes like the skin. So therefore, in our pasuk, which it says ki morit reishe, it also would get the same tumor like the pasuk says later on. But Rashi doesn't bring from later on, and Rashi doesn't quote this, and that doesn't seem to be Rashi's source. Because how could Rashi rely on another pasuk, which we learn it out? On the contrary, the Teres Kohanim, the source, clearly delineates, tells us that this pasuk taka maybe you Torah totally, but because we have a rule dover lomid minyone, because we see later on this becomes tomei in the place in which it grows, and it does get the erbasa. So we're saying that's what it means here too. But Rashi doesn't bring. How does Rashi know this? Again, so let's look inside. So Meforshim bringing al smoker lepirush Rashi, the limud with chilas teres kahanim. They bring down the study that brings down the beginning of teres kahanim in Braisa the Rabbi Yishmael, in the Braisa of Rabbi Yishmael. The pasuk says there dover alomid me in yonei ketzad. The Rashi Yishmael, we say it in the davening dover yonei v'dover misefer. Where do we see dover alomid me in yonei? So it says ketzad because the pasuk says. The ish ki yemoret reishe kereachu, our pasuk we're talking about, it says, if the whole hair falls out, he is a poreach, is a bald. Toiru is toir. So it says the Teres Kahanim, yochel ye toir mikol tumek. So maybe you should toir from all tumas. So later on, later on in the pasuk says in Perikut Gimel pasuk membeis. In the karachas, the kabachas, there will be nega lovan adamdo. There will be a plague, white reddish So they're saying Dover Halamed Me'inyone. This is something which we learn out from the subject matter. From there, the pasuk says, "She'enei toyer mikol tuma." So you see, the pasuk says from the other pasuk that there is a karachas v'gabachas negalova adamdom. So it tells you, therefore, when our pasuk said toiru, it's not toyer mikol tuma, says the Teres Chanim. Only from tumas nesakim bilvad. That's how we let it out. Okay, that's the halacha. That's Teres Kohanim. Oh, but in Pirush Rashi, kemer hazeh nitlerna. We can't answer that. It's because Davar Lo Minyone, because the pasuk later on. Or from Teres Kainim Gufe is moving, because from the Teres Kainim itself it's understood. As the Pirush from Tohir who in that pasuk, what is Tohir in this pasuk? Main Tohir legamri. It would mean totally. Tohir mikol tuma. Next pasuk tells you it's ain't Tohir mikol tuma. This pasuk Tohir mikol tuma. Keep shutting. On the Raya, what's the evidence that Toyer Norma Tumas Nesokim? How do we know that it's only clean from Nesokim, but not from Tumas Negoy Egetzar Basar? Is Eshuna Vaitidikum Pasik, is from a later Pasik. When in the Karachas or in the Gabachas, the front, the back, the different bolt spots, there is a nega. Oh, you see. But in our Pasik, no. Und ob Rashi lernt also über Pashtus Aksuvim, so if Rashi learns this in the simple meaning, that this is what it means, Rashi does bechlal make it up from Father Zayin Posik say, you should leave it alone. Why does Rashi have to tell us what tzaras there is? He should just tell us. Not from this Posik we know that it's tired. Rashi should just leave it blank, that it doesn't have tumas nesakim, and later on you'll learn in the pasuk that if karachas begabachas there will be a tuma. So you'll see that it's not toher betumas all tumas, only in tumas nesakim, and not the other one. The bal der pasuk zoktes weiter meferish. It says meferish. So Rashi just leave it out, not saying that you be makam and only betumas nigas basar. You just say no nesakim. That's toher. Maybe you're going to say, Rashi doesn't want you to make a mistake. You're going to say Toiru, you're not going to know what it says later on. You think it's Toir from everything, and that's wrong. And Rashi is trying to tell you, don't make no mistake. Toiru does not mean really fully Toir. He doesn't want to wait till later on so you'll find out the truth. He wants to tell you what the types of Toiru. Can't say that Rashi cautions us in the beginning of this subject. Even though it says beferish the psukim, but Rashi wants to tell you right in the beginning. Kedem is only tatos of mator who made legamri. So don't make a mistake that Torah means totally. Warum Rashi zogt nit dem teuchen apokosov. Rashi does not tell you what the pasuk says. If Rashi wants to refer to what the pasuk says, the pasuk ki yeh b'karachas goimer. He doesn't say in pasuk state. What does the pasuk say over there? Rashi says pisya and lev. Rashi gives you all the different tum. Rashi says in pasuk state it tells you what's the plague is going to be. There is going to be a red whitish nega. The mare hanega. It tells you what the nega looks like. But Rashi doesn't say to you here that it's nidin be nega lovan adamdo. Rashi zogt a little bit simone niga irbasar. Besar lovan michyo pishyet. That's not what the pasuk talks over there about. Is there food muchach? So from this it's evident. As Leut Shitas Rashi darf man nicht ankommen zu dem weiteren Pasuk zu wissen. We don't need the further Pasuk to know the halacha as Nidoin b'simon niger basar that you are judged with the signs of the erbasar. Das weiß man von dem Pasuk. We know that from this Pasuk itself. Und der Pasuk Kiyir bekarachas goyim nega loven adam dem gumu goyim kum zogen de maris ne goyim bekarachas begabachas. That tells you what color is. But the halacha of the simonim of it, that seir loven and pitchin and omichyo, that we know from this pasuk itself. How? How do we know that? Euch darf man verstehen. So the Rebbe is asking, why does Rashi have to bring this down? And Rashi is not because of the pasuk later on. Rashi doesn't even refer to the pasuk later on, which talks the color of the nega. Rashi talks about the simonim of the nega, and it's from this pasuk itself. But the Rebbe wants to know further, why is Rashi going into all these details? Even if you're going to find an explanation why Rashi needs the Haisofa Elubis Simone Niger Bosor, the signs of Niger Bosor, why does Rashi have to specify all the signs? Why does he have to add and detail? What these signs of El Bosor, the Lechaira? What is the nafkemine in them pasuk? In this pasuk, what difference does it make? Rashi will sagen, alle protim von nega, bekorachas v'gabachas. What is all the simonim of nega, bekorachas v'gabachas? Is in pasuk v'chiyeh, the later on pasuk, when it talks to you that the color. So Rashi should say he needs all the simonim there. Base. Ubefrat, as die Simone Nige Erbosser, steht doch früher in der Teure befeirisch. The Teure says it befeirisch, die Simone Nige Erbosser. And Rashi doesn't have to specify them. So why does Rashi find it necessary to say the Simone Erbosser? Why does Rashi Bechlal has to say that it's Metame Benige Erbosser? The Rebbe says we cannot learn like the Mefarshim Teres Kohanim, because Rashi cannot be relying on the pasuk later on, and Rashi doesn't even quote the lashon from the pasuk later on. It has to be here, and then Rashi Rebbe wants to know, why does Rashi have to say all the details? We know the details I've said before about this simonim. And if Rashi wants to tell you that in the Karachas Gabachas later on, when it tells you that it'll be the Mara Lov and Adam, Rashi should say there what that the three simonim. And the Rebbe continues to add a whole nother issue now with the Seir Loven, which one of the three signs. Is there Bechlal such a thing as a Seir Loven in the Karachas, in Yemoret Reishe? And this seems to be in conflict with what the Rambam says, and we will continue to learn further in Ois Gimel. Ois Gimel. Benegeya Siv Gimel. Benegeya de Simonim, was Rashi sagt, Beseir Loven, Umichyo Pishen, Fregen Mefarshim. Mefarshim asks, is a Mishnah Mefureshes. It is a very clear Mishnah. As Karachas Vegabachas, when there's the bald spot in the front, the back, Zainen, the head, the beard, Zainen Metame Blois Bebeis Simonim. They are only Metame with two Simonim. Bemichyo Bepishen. Aber nicht mit dem Siemen von Seir Loven, but not with the sign of a Seir Loven. Wie es ist euch befurisch in Teres Kahanim, auf dem Posik, and the verse it says, Tzoras Peirachas Hi, and that's in the Posik in which it talks about Kiyeh Bekarachas and Begabachas. So when there is a plague over there, so it says in the Posik that Tzoras Parachas Hi. So Tzoras Melamed Shi Metame B'michya. From Tzoras, we know that it's Metame with the Michya, with the raw, with the raw skin, and Parachas Melamed Shi Metame B'pishim, with spreading out. That Parachas, that it spread out. So this is the two Sman. He Eino metame b'ser loven. This is clearly what a ser loven is not metame. From moment, nemt Rashi dem Chiddush, from where does Rashi take this novelty as ki morit reishei, and this is the case in which the bald spot in the head, which is the same halacha as in the further the psukim. Is er nicht noch mit dem Simen von Seir Loven? How does he know that we also do the sign of Seir Loven, which both the Mishnah and Teres Karnim say no, is Hepech HaHalacha. And the Rebbe says in Tvusim Yesheni V'Kis V'Yad Rashi, in the old prints and also in some handwriting of Rashi, steht Taka nicht Seir Loven. Taka doesn't stay Seir Loven. Aber von dem, was mir gefindt, das ja mit Tvusim an Futzim. But the fact that we do find it in prints that are common, found, und also is given the Girsa Lifnei Haram, and that was the Girsa of Rashi in front of Rabbi Chaim who comments on this Rashi, und kamen meforsh Rashi, many of Rashi's commentaries, is move on, so it's understood that this Girsa B'Seir Loven Hotan Orta, there is room for that version, B'Seir Loven. In Pirush Rashi, Pshuta Shal Mikra, in Rashi, Pshuta Shal Mikra. So how do we explain this? So the Rebbe brings out from the Rambam in Sefer Hayad, by dem Din zogt, Hakarachas v'agabachas metames bebei simonim. Also, two simonim, the karachas and gabachas. B'michyo b'pishen, the two, michyo and pishen. But he adds, what about the Seir Lovan? L'fisha ein bohem seir, ein ha-seir alovan simatuma b'ha'en. Because there is no here there, it's a place there is no here. So therefore, normally there is a Seir Lovan by Ir Bosor, but over there's no here over there because it's a Karachas, it's a Gabachas, it's a Yimoret Reisha, it's a Kereach. And there's no here, so this Simon Lovan is not a Simon Tuvabah. That's not a Sanatum. So the Rebbe says from this Rambam, it seems like he's not rejecting totally that a Lovan Seir will not be a Sar Lovan. It seems like the fact is the Metzias. The Fun is Mashma Lecheda. As the Rambam nimmt nicht on the Drosche von Teres Kahanim, the Rambam does not accept the expounding Drosche of Teres Kahanim that we quoted, as Beseir Loven is don nit metame mitzad alimud, that you learn that it's not metame because the pasuk says it's only tzoras parachas. So we learn michya parachas. He ain't a metame. He, she, the he is exclusion, a clause that only that way, but not to love it. But the Rambam doesn't accept that. Und wer sagt mir feurisch euch in nor mitzad tam, but he has a reason. He says there's no rear there, not because the pasuk excludes them, but the fact the Metzias is that it doesn't have them. He says it also very clearly in his commentary on the Mishnayos. You cannot imagine over here, you cannot have design over here. We cannot talk about, can be a case of a hair white, because the karachas gabachas is a place that doesn't have hair. Das heißt, wenn es bald sind die Toke mokum sar, since there is not, because since it's not in a place where there's here, b'mele can do nit sein kin sar lov, there cannot be a hair or white hair. So it's a practical thing, but not because of the pasuk. So, and Rashi says that nidam b'visar lova. So now it's very difficult to say as is a machloikes b'metzias, that there is a practical difference here. Uledas Rashi came by a karachas wachsen seir, Rashi holds that a karachas could grow her, and that's why it says it can be b'seir. Ubemele zoich seir love, and ain't for this one tumah. Then seir love will be also one of the signs of tumah. So from the Rambam, we see that he doesn't accept the Teres Kahanim. And that's why he says, because there's a practical issue. But still, according to the Rambam, it's a practical matter. There's no Seir Lovan there. So how could Rashi say Seir Lovan? So according to Rashi, there is Seir Lovan. And according to the Rambam, there's no Seir Lovan. And according to the Teres Kahanim and the Mishnah, it's min halacha doesn't work. But the Rebbe says that actually, even according to the Rambam, there is not that it doesn't shayach over there, a Seir Lovan. But because there's no usual Seir Lovan, let's see what the Rambam it explains by the Kesef Mishnah. The Rebbe explains what the Rambam means. Rambam doesn't mean there's no here, practically speaking. But from Divra Kesef Mishnah, but when we look at the words of the Kesef Mishnah, B'soiber Rabbeinu Shahat Toiro Miato Mahatam Shekosav. He holds that why did the Torah exclude? This is the reason. The Torah says that it's not mitame, like the Torah Skanim says he. His mitame is for the reason that he writes that there's no here. Ados is der tam von der Rosh Torah Kahanim. This becomes the reason for what the Torah Kahanim expands to the pasuk. He ain't a metame b'sar lovan. That when it says he, that excludes that it does not metame b'sar lovan. And the reason is because there's no here. Is mashma. So from this, it appears as euch leuten Rambam is shaykh the metzias from Cyrus, that even according to the Rambam, there is physically the existence. There could be hears there. If there's no such an existence, there's no hears over there. Why would the Torah have to exclude it? Wieder Rash is Masbir, Droshes Ateris Kanim. So the Rash explains the drasha of the Teres Kahanim. Behold, the loy Omar Ibcha, she is Tame Besor Lovan Beloy B'Michya. Why doesn't he say Farkert he only Beseir Lovan and not B'Michya? Mishum Distamayu Loy Megadli Sair, because generally they don't grow here. Umihu Zimnin Diesh Behem Sar. Sometimes there is or you have people that have bolts that are bold. There's 2 or 3 years, basically, which means to say that there is an existence of here over there, but there's not that much to speak of. So therefore, we're going to say that the Torah excluded that, even though there is some here. So Dafna Lefi Zogen, as the Pshat in Divrei Rambam, so what does the Rambam mean according to this, that there is, we have to say when he says that it doesn't have horror. Because they don't have here. What he means to say is bald as bechlal is dort kin sar nit faran. Generally, there's not here there. The riber afilu when es wächst dort sar loven, even when there is a white here, is there sar loven nit kin simatu b'hem. So that's not a sign of tuma because that's not the usual over there, and that would be also the reason for the teres kahanim. So we see that according to the Rambam, we're not going to look at the Sar Lovan as a simatoma because it's unusual there to be here there. So b'tzorich biur. So why does Rashi say Seir Lovan? In Bosbar steht der Chiluk zwischen das Rashi, like Girshul Shanenu, according to our Girsa. What is Rashi says that it says also Bisar Slovenis, Pshutushal Mikra. So what's the difference? As Afal Piados is Nitke Mokim Sar, even though it's not the place of here, is Sar Lovan. If there is the white here, Ebki Yotzim in a Klal Baxter Dorif as an exception, it does grow there, is a Rasim Tuma. So according to Rashi, that's a sign of Tuma. Rashi brings down, this is a sign of Tuma. Und der Rambam, das Rambam halacha, as about says Nitke Mokim Sar, it's not a place of here, is Ein Hasar Alovin Simatuva, and the Sar Alovin is not Simatuva. So anyways, Rashi still goes against the halacha. The way it's in the Rambam, the way it's in the Teres Kohanim. But not only that, Rashi seems to be going against the Metzias, because the Rambam says there's no here there. So that the Rebbe modified based on the Kesef Mishnah and the Rash, that it doesn't mean that there's no here at all, but it's only an exception. So that means because an exception there is, we can't say Rashi's arguing and saying, no, there's a lot of here over there. No, it's a karachas, there's no here there. So we have to say, the question is, there is a little bit of here there. According to the Rambam, or it's halacha, because mostly there's no here there, even there's an exception of here, that here is not a simatuma. But Rashi holds, even though that's an exception, it is a simatuma. What is the reason that, according to Rashi, it is a simatuma, even though it's not a mokim seir? So this is all of the issues that we need to understand. B'chalal, why Rashi brings down the details over here and brings down the Sarlovan, which we have a separate problem. This is whether Sarlovan is a Tumah. In Halacha, it seems it's not Tomei. And what are the facts? Seems like there is some Sarlovan. Rashi seems that that fact should make it Tomei. And why does Rashi B'chalal have to bring down that it does become Tomei? All these questions. Dal, B'yeshloimar Habiru B'kolseh. So, to say the be, Rashi learns it from the fact that Rebbe says there's an extra word kereyachu. It says ishki moret reichoi. Toiru. What is that pasuk giving you the reason kereyachu? The kereyachu is telling you that that is a mokim oir boso. Kereyachu adds that it's a mokim boy, it has the tumas. Shlomo Rabbi Rukol said, Rashi is medayik in the verte vacher is maltik from pasuk. Rashi is looking into those words that he quotes from the pasuk. It says kereyachu. The lechaira, it would seem aim der pasuk kommt bloy zogen dem din. As ishki yimoret reisha goyim toiru. It's just coming to tell you that if you have the bolt, you're toir. Toir from nesek. Toiru metumas nesokim. It's toir from the tomb of nesokim. Pavosh steht euch kereyachu. Why is it kereyachu? Oh, but the Rebbe says again. It would be okay if we would learn that generally the plagues of Nisokim means that there are here of the head that were detached, taken out. Is verstandig was der Posig zog do. We understand why the Posig is kereyachu. Because the Torah wants to distinguish between this and the other. His verstanding was the pasuk zodo kerechu. So if in nesek means that a hair was removed, we understand why the pasuk says kerech. Weil der mit is musbar der chiluk zwischen nesek, because that explains the difference between the nesek Vos is a nega, which is a nesek, midem vos yimoret reishai, that if he has a totally bald spot, why he's tired. B'shas as noshru sairis be'emtza haroish, if there are here in middle of the head, not in a corner, not a section, but in middle of the head, vazainen makiv dem mokoy mikol tzad, and they surround the place where the head, where the hair gets detached, ripped out, is dos an inyan fun chayli ba'mokim, that makes the place sick. That's called a sick spot. On the river is the anega. That's why there's a plague. There's an nesek. Pshas aber as der ganze Sar von einem, von the zwei, da der Rosh. But if the entire here and one of the two sides of the head is nimrat, it has been bold taken out, damot is kerechu. That's a kerech. It's not a sickness because it's a balding. Das is der teva von dem Odom. This is the nature of this person. Ki b'divrei b'nei Odom, ki b'tivei b'nei Odom rabim, because this is the nature of many people. Sheyikaroch la'miut asar, that some of this sar becomes bold. B'tzdodei rosh locher leponim in the back or the front. Ve'in hanituk bahem choyli achar. And this detachment there is not a other sickness, eloi harihu keshar haguf, but it's like the rest of the body, und der riber toirhu, and that's why he's toir. So that is if we say usually what the meaning of netek is. But loit pirush Rashi, according to Rashi, however, loit pirush Rashi, but according to Rashi, as nitos is the chilik zwischen nisokim und kimoret roshe. That's not the difference between the sokim moret roshe, where the nesek. There is no taking out over there at all. Father Tzirbir, Favos like zu der Pasuk Meisiv Kerechu Toiru. Why does the Pasuk add that it's a Kerechu and it's Toiru? Why Kerech? The Rebbe learned Rashi as the Pasuk complement, where the Pasuk is coming to teach us. Nit nor Tara mitumas nesokim. It's not just telling you Toir, the din. Sheina nidem b'simon reish v'zokin chulu. Nor oichu beikir, but also and mainly at his nidem b'simon niga or bosakit lakamon, that you have to deal with it like the simone of the negoim of the skin, as the Rebbe explains now. Hey, der Unterschied zwischen den zwei Dees anal benegei und nesokim, these two opinions that we talk about, is it a detachment of here, or it's just a different kind of a nega, as Rashi learns? Benegei nesokim is a chiluk in the etzem geder from nesek. That is a difference in the definition, in the essence of the definition of a nesek. The question is, si nesek is oizgetelt von nega ir basar belois beloy mokem nega. Is nesek distinguished, separate from the nega ir basar, just depending on the place of the mokem nega? This is on the skin and this is in the hair. Other sees an under sug nesek, or maybe it's a different category. It's a different category of a nega. But Tzadem kommt anaf kemine legabe karachas v'gabachas, and therefore you get a difference with karachas and gabachas. Whether by a karachas and a gabachas, what is the simonim there? Betchilas parshas nesokim, the beginning of the parshas nesokim, v'ish o isho, a man or a woman ki yibe nega b'rosh b'zokin. You have a nega either in the head or in the beard. Taich Rashi translates, Bo hakosov l'chalik be'nega shebemokim sar, the nega shebemokim basar. The Torah is coming to make a distinction. Where the nega is it in a place of here, or it's in a place where there's flesh? Shazeh simonim b'sar loven. If it's in the flesh, it's a white hair. Shazeh simonim b'sar tzohiv. And if it's a place where it's here, that siman for the nega is a yellow. Das heißt, das Rashi seinen das nicht kein zwei Sugim in a goyim. According to Rashi, they're not two separate categories in plagues. Nor says there's other sug, it's the same category. When the chilik b'neim is bloi b'mokim, the difference is only in the place. Was mitzadem chilik b'mokim, because there's a difference in the place, vertachiluk aber not, there's a difference between the place. What's the color? Not in the simone hatuma from the nega, only in the sign of the nega. As b'mokay basar is simone b'seir lovan. If it's in a space where there is flesh, then the simon is a white ear. B'mokim seir, if it's this nega is in a place over here, is simone b'seir tzover, the simon is a yellow here. Und das, was wird angerufen b'shem acher nesek, why is it called different name, the plague of the beard or the head? Is Virashi so kach shmei shel nega shemokim sar. It's just the name of the nega, which in the sar we call it nesek. So it's not Hashina Hashem is a different name, but there's no change, the same category. But is moved from the hechrich to mefarish sein. So based on this, we understand what we have to explain as the posik kereach hu toir hu. Kommt sagen, es kommt nicht bloß as toir mit tumis nesokim. She'ena nidin b'simon reish v'zokin, that we don't judge simon reish v'zokin. Nor oich as nidin b'simon niger b'sbasar chulu. That we have to deal with it. That's why it says kereach. The Wörter kereach hu in posik seinen apirush v'tam if dem was toir hu. Kereach hu, that's why it's toir. Kereach hu is madgish, as der mokim arosh vusi is do. The karachas is nit ki mokim seir. That's not a place of here. This change, this is now the spot is not a mokim seir. Was the far is nitot dort nisokim, the nega should be mokim seir. There is no nisokim there because in a place of here there is nisokim and there's no nisokim there. When a yosas is nit ki mokim seir, it's not the place. Is b'derech mamela chaliv them together from their basar, so automatically it becomes like the regular skin of basar. When a nega b'mokim zeh is nit b'simun nega basar. A nega in that place is their basar. The nega is the same nega, but it's just depending. If there's no here, then it's basar. Das heißt, Rashi zogda nit kin sebes under dinim. It's not two separate dinim. It's not nesek and it is their basar. No, it automatically becomes the other. Ein din, Rashi is not saying two dinim. As ein din as toir mitumas, nesokin. She'eina nidan mitumas reish v'zokin shem malkim seir, that he don't judge this by the simon reish v'zokin, which are a place of here. That's one halacha. And another halacha, unochadin, in Basar is yenid, and we do judge him simon niger Basar. That we do deal in niger Basar. No, that's not what Rashi is saying here. The two separate parts. No, Rashi learned as the posik zogda in zach. It's just telling you one thing. Kereach hu toir hu. That the bald as kereach hu, that this is not here. Vertos ois mokoim sar. It's not a place of sar. Umemela toir metumas nesukin. It's automatically no more nesukim. She'enin nidam b'simon reish v'zokin she'mokim sar. Elo b'simon niger basar b'sar lovan. It is no longer the mokim of seir, but it's a mokim of basar. You use the simon of niger basar b'sar lovan v'chulu. And that's him shot. Mashenkin al derech halacha. As opposed to halacha, as nesek is an under sug in the goyim. It's a different category. Here we just have places. Whatever the place is, it's the same plague. So we're not coming up with a new plague over here. But halachic, there is nesek is a different category of a plague. And under sug in the goyim, was nesek nitek musham asar. Over there, the sar was removed from there, so it's a new kind. Das heißt, as mokem abosor hot ein sug negoim, place of flesh is one category of negoim. Und reish v'zoken, not zweite sug negoim. They have a separate category of negoim. Is from kereach hu. So from kereach hu kemen nor wissen So what only we know from Krechu, as Bishasi, Morit Rosh is Nitoder din nesek. When you Morit Rosh, it doesn't get the halacha of nesek. And the Noch is the Pasuk Machadish. But what happens in that place? Okay, we know what it's not. And later on in the Pasuk tells us if there is something happening in the place of which is a non-place now. It's like a third area. There's Eir Basar, then there is a Mokim Seir, and then there is a place when it becomes empty. So what is over there? What's the status over there? Then there's the Pasuk Machadish, Asis Fra Noch Hasug B'Negoyim. There's a third category. Karachas v'gabachas, a new area. Canal Sibes from Teres Kahanim. As Dover Aloven Minyone, that we learn it from the subject matter later on where the Torah talks about it. So we learned that when the Pasuk says it, Torah, she'ein Torah mikol tuma, elam tumas nesokim bilvat. It's not only tumas nesokim. Thus haste, which means as lulei then weiter dicken Pasuk, without the pasuk further, hota nor zu sagen, as bekarachas or kabachas, is the clown talking the nega. There's no nega over there. It's not a mokum sidus, and it's not a mokum or it's a yemarit reshi, it's a kereach, and therefore it's toyer. But later on, the pasuk says, oh, there's also a place over there. That's in the Gemara and Halacha. But in Rashi, there is no other thing. If it's one or the other, it's the same nega. It's just the place changes. Once it's not a mokim sidus, it's by itself on Erbasa. But says moving was Rashi's mamshich und sagt mefeirish euch the simonim. We understand now Rashi has to sell you also the simonim. The meat is a madgish. Rashi wants to emphasize. Ados was need misimon and niga erbosor is not nor mitzadadin. It's not only mitzadadin that there is halacha as men learned of from a posik as nid misimon and niga erbosor, that we learn it from a posik that there is, so it's like a new place, and we have a halacha that we learn. No, she's over another sug nega. Maybe it's a different nega. Nor ados is ein zach. Rashi wants to me. This is one thing. The bald is felt in them gather from okum sar, because it is missing. It's not defined as a place of sar. Then automatically it's the regular nega erbasa. Is memela chal of the gedori for nega makom erbasa. It rested in the place of makom erbasa. Not to tell us that there's new kinds of tum over there, just that it's remained with what it was. So the Rebbe says that according to Rashi, there's no new nega. This is just an extension. It's the same nega. It's either berbasar or not. And if it's not berbasar, it's toyer hu. There's a kerechu, and therefore it's not a mokim sidus, and therefore it's a mokim basar, and therefore it has all the definitions of basar. And as the Rebbe explained before, Rashi says also with Lovon versus, or the Rambam says that we don't deal with the nigei, the simonim of Lovon, of a white hair. Based on the above, understand the difference from Shitas Rashi and Shitas Rambam. Tzitos was karachas v'gabachas and nitke mokin sar, that the karachas and bachas are not a place of sar, is a tam, a sar loven soll dort nicht sein kein simentuma, whether that will be a reason there should be no simentuma. According to Rashi, it's just an extension, so what's the difference? So that is a simentuma. There happens to be a white, then you judge by that. Let Rashi is kereyahu, as is nit kemokim sar. It's just kereyahu, it's not a place of sar. And it's blois shoylel, as is nit kemokim sar. Virosh v'zokin, it's not a hair and a beard. But as is nit erger v'shar chelka guf, it's no less, it's no worse than the other parts of the body, eirabosar. Und der Rebbe ist das nicht kein Tam, a Sarah Loven soll nicht sein kein Siman Tumah. That would not be a reason that a Sarah Loven should not be a sign of Tumah there, just like everywhere else. No, there's Punkt Shara Guf, it's just like the rest of the body. Was ist nicht kein Mokim Sar? It's not a hair better. Wie Rosh Zoken. Und Sarah Loven is not a Simas Tumah. Sarah Loven is a sign of Tumah. Shitas Rambam, but the Rambam's view, however, is via Paskin Hilchos Tumas Saras, as he rules in the laws Tumas Saras. Anigei Haresh Vazoken Ushiyipel Hasayir Shememikore. That their plagues of nesek, which is the Reish Zokin, is that the hair falls out from its root. Vishoyer Mokem Asar Poni. Zoanikra nesek. And it remains empty, as called nesek, as we said before, from the interpretation of nesek. Ben shoyer marei omag, ben shlohoy omag v'chulu. Das heißt, as nesek, nigi harosh vazoken, is an anders Sug nega. It's a different kind of nega. So, und das, was Karachav ze Gabacha seine Metame benegoim. So why do they Metame Karachav ze Gabachas, as the Pasuk says, Beferish, later on, Adamdom, Levonus Adamdom, Metame is not an Inshe B'derech Memele V'Lishitas Rashi. Not automatically, it's not the Rish Zokin, then it's the Reach Seir Basar. As Balzin, you're talking Cyrus. Since there's no Cyrus, it's just B'derech Memele V'Erabosar, so it's automatically like the Erabosar. Nor freyer darf chal sein of them ageder from kerechu. First, you must apply to it, defined as kerechu, as in the gadol sar. It's not fit to grow here. Or the person has done it. Or the apulos odom, he's sirei shairei. He made his hair fall out. Alpha pi sharoi legadil achar zman, even though it's fit to grow later on, the Rambam says, since right now his hair is lost totally, so therefore it's called also a kerech v'gabech. And then we have something a lesson that we learn out from the pasuk. As a karachas v'gabachas mitamis. Just Eirabosser is Metame Karachas also. With the Rambam brings Rebbe Kimare Tzaras Eir Basar, like the look of the Tzaras Eir Basar. So there is a tumor on a Karachas Gabachas. Nicht wie Shitas Rashi meweist das von der Werte Kerechu Gufa, from the words Kerechu. The Rambam uses a pasuk that it says Kimare Tzaras Eir Basar. There's a new kind of leprosy on the place where there's a Karachas. Das heißt, dass der Rambam is karachas v'gabachas nit derselber sug nega v'nega rabasa. It's not the same category, nega rabasa. Und das ist, what the Rambam is masbeh. That's what the Rambam explains. Ulefi shein b'im sir. Ein haseir alovim tzimah. So there, we go no here there. This hoyer is not a sign of tumah. V'bal das der geder von karachas v'gabachas. Is those was Abraham say, or that's their definition. There's no here there. That's karach gabachas. Das heißt, nicht nur as is nicht kein mokim seir. It's not only this space is not a mokim seir, but vi roish v'zoker. Aber es ist voran sar al derech vi eir habosar shebachshar chalka gofen. It's not a place, but there is sar is there, like the rest of the parts of the body. Nor sees a berhoit nit tov by zeikin seir. There's no here there. I feel it is not even the way it's in regular flesh, regular skin body of the person. But the far is those abuzunder parshi negoim. It's a separate portion negoim abuzunder sug nega. It's b'meila moving, so it's understood. As der sug atuma vos is verbundu with the mokim shein beim seir. It's tied to a place there's no seir. It's not verbunden with seir loven. It's nothing to do with the seir loven. Even if they're actual, there'll be some here, they're still not going to make a difference. To use a different style, a different way to say this. The bald kereyahu is shelel, nit nor mokim sar v'rosh v'zokin, nor sar b'chlal. Kereach excludes. It's not the place of here. There is no here. Ein Mesitis. Ein beim Seir. The river werd by Kereach. The river by Kereach Vakser. If there is some here there. He says, it's as if that hair doesn't belong here. It's not something that belongs here. So the laws, the definition as they apply to Sire, not applicable by Karachas and Gabachas. And therefore he doesn't judge them by the Seir law. According to Rashi, the Karachas and Kabachas are the same as the rest of the body. It's just the Kerechu, and therefore it's only about the space. According to the Rambam, it's not just the space, it's the fact that there is no hair there. So you can't judge him by the hair. And if there is hair, doesn't belong there. So it's not that hair. So therefore it's they need Meser Love. But Rashi says it is near Mshutish Mikra because it's a Kareach. The Pasuk is Kareach to tell you that it's a regular place of Oyer B'Sori, and Oyer B'Sori is Nidem Seir Loven. If there happens to be a Seir Loven there, that would be a Seir Loven, and then that would be a sign of Tumah. Zay. Afal Pi as Ladas Rambam Izoich Karachas v'Gabachas Oizgitelt V'Nige Er Ha Bosor. So even according to the Rambam, Karachas and Gabachas are distinguished from the other Nigeur Bosor. The Lovon, Asad Lovon doesn't betamet there. Stellt es aber zusammen mit den anderen Negoyim von Neura Bosor. The Rambam places it together with the other Negoyim that are on the skin of the flesh of the person. Unoich de Metzies und die Simone Hanega seinen Shove. The facts and the signs of the nega are the same. It's a different category, but still they're the same. Sha'areish, according to the Rambam, Sha'areish azoken shenikrechu ka'ira bosel l'chol dover elo she'ein metam misir loven. They're for everything the same. Pishin and all the details, but ein metam misir loven. Wo is madgish as is an ander, wo is madgish as is an ander sug von nega? Where does he emphasize that it's a different category of nega? Is those by nesokim. When it comes to nesokim, nige harosh vazokim. Was das schreibt der Rambam? Bepeirig b'fnei atzmei, b'soy von alle nige odom, den al nige odom. So, even though the Rebbe had just concluded that according to the Rambam, there's basically three categories. There is Nigei Rabosar, there is Nigei Nesokim, for Rosh Mokim, and then Nigei of Kareach Gebeach, which is its own category of Tumah. But yet the Rambam puts them together with the rest of the Nigei Rabosar. And the Rambam does distinguish with the nesek, the Rosh Nigei Rosh Zokim. Why? There's das Wort is that we can say the explanation und der Bier in dem Chiluk zwischen das Rashi and das Rambam, and also explanation the different opinion Rashi and Rambam, Bazal Pitam HaMitzvah is based on the reason of the mitzvahs. Bediver Razal werden gerechnet kam Averis welchen the going boy. The word of our sages of blessed memory, they enumerate several sins for which a person gets plagues. Even though these Averis enumerated are the reason for all categories of the Goyim. But in the commentaries of the Torah we find as kamen von die Averis seine verbunden miteinander Zug von der Goyim, that several of these Averis have a special tie to a different category, to very different categories of the Negoim. The Chilukei Maris Negoim, the difference, the color of the Negoim, Prota Negoim, details of the Negoim, Nega or Bosor, Nega on the skin, Shchin, boil, Michve, Nesek, V'chulu, a special Aveda for a special kind of a Nega. In Pirshu Rashi, Rashi's coming in Torah, bringt Rashi nur zwei Inyonim. Of us Negoim Boim. Rashi only brings two matters for what you get Negoim. Negoim Boim Aloshon Hora. Negoim come for speaking evil tongue, and Negoim Boim Agas Ruach. Negoim come for arrogance of spirit, holiness. Those are the zwei Sugim in Negoim. These are the two categories of Negoim. Niga Ir Basar, the Negoim on the flesh, Nega Mokim Sar, and then a Nega which comes in the place of the hair, Niga Rosh Vazokim. They correspond. Lashon Hora was his Maise Pitputei Dvarim. Lashon Hora, which is an act of talk, verbal talk, Pitputei Dvarim. An Inyan Chitzoni by dimension, they are an external matter by the person. They cause the plagues in the other parts of the body, in the skin of the flesh. I mentioned this is a lower step within the person itself. But arrogance of spirit, holiness, was kommt und ist verbunden mit apnimisdikon ort in mention, which comes and is associated with an inner part, person's arrogance that placed the inside. It's not just talk outside, but it's from the inside, which a person's holiness comes from. Ritas on the mokim, the that reaches to the high place of the person that had or the beard. So this is in Rashi. There's just two, either or. The Rambam sagt, wegen the Goyim, the Rambam says about the Goyim, das kommt mit Zad Lashon Hara. Comes because Lashon Hara. Und is masbir dem Chet davon, and he explains what's the sin. Asoif bring der Chet in Dibur, that this sin that you're just speaking, the daber belakim v'kivrim bikar, to speak against Hashem, and you deny the main things. Apizei shloimar, ados is der chilik l'das Rambam, zwischen nega oir, bosar b'chlal, mit nega rosh v'zoken. The difference between the nega of the oir bosar in general with nega rosh v'zoken. Neger oir bosar b'chlal mit nige rosh v'zoken. Nesek. Goes man der chet ha'odam is nor sichos rishoim. Shual litzones v'loshn. As long as it still remains, the sin of the person is just the speak of the evil, which is the mocking, and Lashon Hara and the negoim verbunden mit dem Eira Basar shebeguf. These negoim are tied to the skin of the flesh in the body. B'shas aber das bringt him to ledaber belikim v'kefrim beikar, when it brings him to speak against the Eibishter, against Hashem, and to deny beikar. An inyan verbunden mit das, mideus, that is something that has to do with his beliefs, with his opinions. Damals kommt negoyim beroish v'skoine nesek. Then it comes in the beard and the nesek. Okay, so that's the connection between, according to Rashi, between just pitputei dvorim and arrogance, and according to the Rambam, Lashon Hara, which leads you to denying Hashem. So based on this, we can explain the difference between Rashi's and the Rambam's opinion. The Das Rashi is negoyim boim al Lashon Hara v'gas ruach. According to Rashi, the plagues come from Lashon Hara and gas ruach. Chotz du seine zwei Sachen, even though these are two, seien sie ober in demselben, so they're in the same category. Achet was is beikar klape chavere. It's mainly a sin which is mainly towards your friend. The Rebbe learned Rashi as Nigi Rosh Vazok and Nesokim. Rashi learns that these Negoim, the Rosh Zokim, seine nicht kein ander Sug. It's not a different category. This is the name of a nega when it is in the place of the here. It's called nesek, but it's still basically the same category. It's against a individual, against your friend. Das Rambam ober as the Nigerosh sind verbunden mit Kfir Biker. That the Nigerosh are associated with denial in Hashem is doch das legamri another sug v'negoyim shebeir basar. It's a totally different category. Was kommen auf Lashon Hara? They come in Lashon Hara. The Rebbe tells the Rambam is Nigerosh al sabazunder sug nega. That's why he puts it as a separate category. By its own chapter, at the end of all the plagues of the human. To a certain extent, this is distinguished as seriousness. This is against Hashem from between the other negoyim which are on the skin of the flesh. Through studying the laws of Negoyim in the written Torah, the Torah Shabbat Peh, and in the oral Torah, it does gufa ma'orer. So that itself encourages, reminds us, awakes us of the mesiras from the Avedas to be careful of those sins of Velchin Negoyim Boyim for which the plagues come. The Hiris Betachlis, totally be careful. Bis to bringen them ton heper dan al, until we behave, we do the opposite. Rambam alimud haloches elu. When we learn these haloches, bringen sheyiyeh k'seirei Yisrael. You should have the Sichos k'seirei Yisrael, the talk of the kosher Yidden, the right Yidden, the proper, the fitting Yidden. But it's only discussing words of Torah Chochma. The Fikuch HaKodesh Baruch Hu Yisrael Yod Hashem helps them and merits them. Those who fear God speak one to another. Hashem listens and he hears and he writes it down as a remembrance before him. Those who fear Hashem. This is Sichos Shabbos Pershas Tazria Tovshin Daled Mem.